What's up, guys? Mitch from RespectMortgaging.com back with yet another episode of the North American Weed Tour podcast. Today, I'm joined by a special guest, Don Dodge, owner of Emerald Coast Cannabis in Bremerton, Washington, my home state. I've been talking to people all around the country all week, finally getting to someone to represent Washington. How you doing today, Don?
I'm good. How's you?
Awesome. Awesome, man. I'm living life. I'm ready for the holidays. I'm down here, like I said, while I'm giving Washington praise, did escape the rain, and I'm in California getting some sunshine right now. I'm not mad at
The
that.
sun is shining right now, believe it or not.
Oh man, see, look at that. Last time we went, where did we just go? We just traveled somewhere. I can't remember 2 weeks ago, and wherever I went, it was just raining. When I was out in Boston, it was raining, and like this is so uncharacteristic. And I was like, man, everywhere I'm going to escape the rain follows me, and then I leave, and then it's sun back home. It is what it is.
Yep.
Um, but I would love to get started. You know how we usually kick these off is just a kind of an introduction to yourself and kind of your history around the plant as it pertains to moving into this industry.
Okay. Um, we moved here. I moved up to Washington in 2010 with my ex-husband, who at the time was a newly retired police officer, and he was taking a daily regimen of Vicodin. And he was working at the casino, and somebody saw him, popping some Vicodin, and they said, "Hey, dude, you're in Washington now. Why don't you go get your green card?" And he had never even really considered getting his green card, considering his background. But his back got to the point where he decided that he was gonna try using marijuana rather than taking opiates, and he did that, got his green card easily with his back injury that he had. And he's a funny, quirky, particular guy. And he decided that he didn't really feel comfortable smoking other people's marijuana. So he decided to start growing it himself. And that just snowballed. We ended up opening up a collective garden. We had a couple of patients that my husband was their caregiver. We had 3 gardens going on at our house, and that's kind of where we grew everything. We had a really nice piece of property, 2.5 acres, and we had a big old shop in the back, and that's where we grew. We had outgrown our own shop, and we decided to open up a storefront, and that's when we opened up our dispensary, and just been going at it ever since. I was actually working a full-time job uh, as a loss prevention manager. Nobody knew what I was doing with marijuana, because I just, the persona, and I just was worried about what people would think, if they found out that I was like into marijuana. And I kept that part of my life a secret for a long time. And when we finally got our license in 2017, I quit my job, and this is what I do full time now.
Yeah, and so talking a little bit off camera, I know you guys had quite the battle to get your license. So I kind of want to talk about that process of having the experience in the medical market and kind of some of those hurdles and challenges it took to move along with this recreation or adult use that opened up around then.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, as you can see, I'm a little bit on the older side, okay, middle aged. And when we opened up our dispensary, I can't tell you how many, we call them patients back then, not customers, but when they would come into the shop and they would see me behind the counter and not who they expected, the typical stoner, with gauges in their ears and all that stuff, you could see the relief on their face. And a lot of people came to medical marijuana as like a last resort.
Mhm.
They got cancer, or they have this Crohn's disease, and they heard marijuana was helpful, so they come in there very shy and very afraid. But I could tell when they saw me, they immediately felt relieved, like, okay, this must not be so bad after all. Look at that respectful woman back there behind the counter. And I love the medical world. It's different. It wasn't regulated. Absolutely,
Mhm.
it wasn't regulated. But you got to know every single patient. I could tell them what they got last week. If it was really good for them, I could look it up. It's different now. It's a retail game now, and it is
Mhm.
what it is. And um, when the process first started, I want to say this, they were only going to allow like 200 and something license. And so everybody that applied for a license over here in Kitsap, Bremerton area, we had to go into like a lottery. because they were at that time in 2013, they were only going to allow 2 stores in Bremerton.
Wow.
Well, everybody wants a weed license, right? So everybody puts in their application, goes into a hat, they draw a name. If that person passes the vetting process, they get the license. So basically, the first 2 people that got drawn got the license. And so we just kind of sat back and we're like, okay, that's okay. We like running our collective garden. We're doing a good business. Well, then they decided to the state of Washington decided to pass SB 5052, which was supposed to be for anybody that has an actual medical dispensary. They didn't want us to have medical dispensaries anymore because we weren't paying any taxes. So the state wasn't making any money off of us. So in 2015, they sent out letters to everybody that had a dispensary and basically said, we're going to give you a chance to get a license.
Hmm.
If you don't get a license before July 1st, 2016, we're going to come shut you. You need to shut down or we're going to basically come shut you down. So that our last ditch effort, we read what the qualifications were for you to get your license, and it was basically you had to have a business license, you had to have owned, operated, or worked in a collective garden, which is exactly the words that they used. They called it collective garden prior to January 1st, 2013. Well, I didn't have a business license when I was running my collective garden. I didn't get the business license until I opened up a storefront. But I had a true collective garden. But honestly, these people that worked for the Liquor and Cannabis Board, they really didn't know what a collective garden was.
Mm.
They kept using the word dispensary, but it was worded as collective garden. And so we put in an application, and then at that time you were allowed to have 3. You were allowed to own 3 stores. So we put in for 3 applications, two in Bremerton, and then one was going to be over in Jefferson County, the Hood Canal, right across the Hood Canal. So we are going through the process. We're talking to our people. They're telling us what we need. We bought a building because why wouldn't we? We know we're going to qualify and get the license, and we're going to own this building. So we had our interview. We had 2 interviews, and after the second interview, the last thing the Liquor and Cannabis Board said to us, go ahead and start building out your shop. When you're done, you give us a call, and then we're going to come inspect it. So we start rocking and rolling and building out our shop, and about 6 weeks into our build, they called me and said that they made a mistake and that we're not getting our license. And I was like, what do you mean you made a mistake? Oh, you don't qualify. I'm like hell I don't qualify. I met every single thing that you stated. And I talked to somebody else, and they basically just said, nope, sorry, too bad, so sad. Click, goodbye. And I was devastated. We had bought this building, spent so much money, had already started building out our shop. My ex-husband had even quit his job at the casino so that he could help build out the shop full time. And I didn't know what to do. We had spent so much money, and this was our passion. We really wanted to do this. And I'm scrolling through Facebook one day, and I saw this ad for Spencer Palace Law Group, and he was representing multiple clients who the Liquor and Cannabis Board had done the same thing to, told them that they didn't qualify. They had medical shops in the past. And I contacted him and asked if I could get in on the lawsuit, and he took us in as a client, and it took us a year of back and forth paperwork and filing this and filing that. And in the end, I think we had one day we were on the telephone for 8 hours doing testimony, and then the next day it was 6 hours. And the judge he had 30 days to come up with his answer or whatever, his conclusion. And it wasn't even a week later that the judge basically said, yeah, the Dodgers were right. You were wrong. They should have their license. But the thing is, Mitch, I got screwed out of my other 2 licenses. When we went to Olympia to meet with the board members, and they gave me my license, and I said, I applied for 3 licenses. Where's my other 2? And she's like, oh, well, we're going to give you a refund, a $350 refund for those $1 million licenses.
Mm.
And I'm still out those licenses. I mean, I could hire a lawyer and pay maybe 50 grand and see if I could fight the Liquor and Cannabis Board, but we all know how deep their pockets are now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's there's been a couple stories like you mentioned. You got in on a lawsuit with a couple people. There was a couple friends of mine that own stores, or cultivation facilities, collectives before legalization and got left out. And some people, spent everything they had
Yeah.
fighting for that. And like you said, it's any legal battle. I think the general listeners out there that have never been in a legal battle, no matter what side of the legal battle you're on, is you don't want to be in a legal battle. Nobody
No,
wins.
no.
Nobody wins.
And I think there was 15 plaintiffs. And if I'm not mistaken, I think my lawyer told us we were the only ones that actually won.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it's unfortunate, and it's unfortunate how this was rolled out. Uh, and sadly, Washington is one of the better states that probably awarded more licenses to legacy operators than any of these other states. You look at some of these markets that they're doing such limited licensing and caps on licenses, and it's just a money game and we're seeing what's going on in Florida. I won't name any names. We covered it on our site. There's a lot of backroom political payouts and things like that happening. It's anytime money's involved, it turns shady pretty quickly. What were some of the challenges of just adjusting to, beyond just regulation, but adjusting to life in a recreational market after having so much history in the medical market?
Can I be like honest?
However you want to share it, share it.
Well, like we used to have a lot of safety meetings after all the patients would leave, but we don't do that anymore. Just we have to be accountable for everything. Like I'll have customers come in and they'll buy something and then they'll just try to rip open the package, and I'm like, no, wait! You can't open that in here. You'll get me in trouble. Just stuff like that. And I was robbed one time, just a grab and run. Some guy asked to see some weed, and this is in, of course, had a mask on, So I put some couple on the counter, and he just grabbed them and ran.
Hmm.
The store down the street from me was just arm robbed.
Wow.
Yeah, just a block down the street from me, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So that's a challenge. Keeping safe with having so much cash on hand because of the whole banking debacle. I don't know what else to call it. I can't tell you how many accounts I had and got closed down because they found out what I was doing. And, I bank safe now. I pay a nice hefty service
Sure.
fee to bank safe, but it is what it is. It is definitely the cost of doing business. Everything costs money in this business.
Absolutely. I mean, from the licenses to the bank, and it's something that I don't think is talked about a lot. That not only is it very difficult to get a bank account, once you get it, like you mentioned, there's service fees. You're not getting great rates. You cannot. There's not traditional lending for this space. Any other
No.
business, I want to improve the dispensary. Let me write a business plan, submit to the bank, and get a loan. That doesn't exist.
I even so the building was paid off. Not one dime was owed on it. And I tried to get a loan, and I went to 3 banks, and I walk in there. I'm like, I own this, 11,000 square foot commercial building. I don't owe any money on it. Would you consider loaning me some money against it? Oh yeah, have a seat, Miss Dodge. Do you have any tenants in the building? Well, yeah, I have a weed store. Okay, thank you, Miss Dodge. It was nice talking to you. We can't help you. Goodbye. Because I didn't even tell them I own the weed store. I only
Right.
told them the weed store was a tenant.
Yeah, and that's the cost. Like you said, the cost of doing business in this industry is very high. And something we were talking about right before we started is the tax rates in this state. I believe 37% is the Washington tax rate, and ultimately, who is hurt the most by that is the consumer. I mean, businesses. I'm not trying to downplay your cost, but the
No, I get it.
consumer.
But yeah, typically retail was a 2 times markup. Well, you have to mark it up 3 times, and even a 3 times markup, and which is all I do. Some stores will do a 3.5
Mhm.
and even a 4%, 4 times markup. I do a 3 times markup. My prices are low because I'm smack dab in the middle of 2 other weed stores, and I came late to the game. So I had to put my hustle on and do something to grab. I find that pot shops are kind of like nail salons or barber shops where people feel comfortable coming in there. So to take somebody else's clients away from
Mm.
them, it's hard, but once I get them in my door, I'm good.
No, absolutely. It's the familiarity. I mean, that stems from the commerce of cannabis pre this. When it was medical, like you said, you had patients that gave you the right to grow for them, and so you cultivated the cannabis they consumed, or you went to a one of very few markets where there was very few vendors,
Yeah.
and for the people that didn't get to experience medical cannabis, you likely had one guy, if you're lucky, maybe two or three guys or girls for a backup, because we've all been there before. But you had this one person, and there was this trust factor, for safety and not getting ripped off. But then also, just like if you found someone that did, it's a good cost and good product,
Yeah.
you didn't ever want to change that up for risk of it
No.
not being the same
No.
experience.
Yeah, and it is what it is, and I'm honest with my customers. I'll tell my customers, I'm like, I paid $3 for this, or I paid $3.33 for this. I said, now I'm selling it to you for $10. I said, the grower, he got his $3.33, but you know how much the state's gonna make out of this? They're gonna make more than me. I'm gonna get what's left.
Hmm.
And that's how I do my markup. And I find that keeping prices low, being honest with my people, my business has, gosh, since 2018 my business has doubled.
Wow.
I think I'm on, and I'm a small store, I'm a small little guy. I'm on point to do over $2 million in sales this year.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you, I'm very excited.
Congratulations. And that's something that I think the general consumer, has a hard time grasping when they see these prices at markup, $50 for an eighth, understanding that wholesale, that was sold for, like, the grower got 15, $16 off that, and then I even see people, I want to get into the industry and collaborate with a brand. And then, I'll get all this money. And it's like, even if you were to do a licensing deal with a brand on that $18 eighth, you could potentially see $2 to $3 out of the 50 it's sold out of the store. It's a low margin game. And I think there's definitely people that are here for the cash grab because it got a lot of hype. But then there's a lot of people that are here because it's truly, truly just intertwined with their passion, whether cannabis is their passion, or like seemingly like kind of what I heard from you is just that connection to whether it's a consumer or a patient, that connection to that person, and what you can share over this plant, if I'm not mistaken.
No, yeah, I mean, I love educating people. I'm shocked when people, when I go, would you like a sativa, hybrid, or indica? And they're like, what's that?
Mm,
And I'm like, nobody's ever told you the difference? And they're like, no. And so I'll give them a little lesson. Or the people that are like, oh, give me that 35% THC. And I'd be like, if you're just buying your weed based on the THC numbers, I'm like, you're not doing it right. I'm like,
right.
it doesn't work for everybody the same way. And I use the pheromone thing. I'll say it's like perfume. Perfume doesn't smell the same on every person because of our pheromones. And I said the same thing with weed because of a cannabinoid system. And a lot of people really seem like, oh wow, I didn't know that. Thank you for that information. And we are about educating our customers. We know the ones that just want to grab their weed and go, and we don't want to aggravate them. But a majority of them are happy to learn. And I have little things over my shop that will, all the different consistencies of concentrates, the difference between THC, THCA, how CBD works better with THC, anything educational that I can pass out to the public, I'm going to do it.
That's awesome, and I like your example of the pheromones and perfume. I have yet to hear that, but I think for education, right, on something that people know so little about, and especially that public information was very sparse for so long, except for misinformation. But these examples to other things where people can draw parallels and be like, "Oh, that makes sense," right?
Yeah.
Um, any one of those really helps connect it, and so I like that one. I'm gonna try and take that with me.
You have my
um yeah, I like it because it's not a comparison to, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but so oftentimes we get caught in comparing cannabis to alcohol or tobacco, or for me, sometimes I compare like the different cannabises, like, I always compare it to just medication, pharmaceuticals. Your average medication you get prescribed has potential side effects. Not everyone gets those side effects. Not everyone gets any side effects, and it all affects people differently. And when you get prescribed a medication, you're aware, is this working how it's supposed to work? If not, try something else. And I
Yeah.
usually use that as cannabis, as just because a strain is something, it's not the same. We all
Yep.
interact with chemicals differently. But again, I'm comparing cannabis directly to pharmaceuticals, and I need more examples to break it to the left or the
That's okay.
right. So what is kind of the nature of like cannabis culture in the Bremerton area? I know you said there's, I think, 5 stores in a decently
Eight,
small town.
8 in a
8.
small town. Yeah. But it's cannabis is very accepted, even though it is a very predominant military and PSNS, the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. So these guys are all federal workers, and they are not allowed to smoke weed, and it's a damn shame
Hmm.
because I know a lot of them that would benefit. They all drink alcohol and go out and do stupid crap. They're not even allowed. I have friends that are in the military that, like, they can't even come by and stop by and say hi, or like if I have something that they need, they can't come by my shop because they're afraid they'll get seen and they'll be in trouble. But for the local potheads that can smoke, and boy, do I have a lot of retired Navy guys that come in my shop too. uh, you know, the culture is, it's awesome. I have a dream, Mitch. I want to open up one of the very first lounges.
Mm.
I don't know if that'll ever happen. You know who's going to make the first one is Las Vegas.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, they got some open. I think they have some open in Vegas.
I know they were talking about it, but I didn't know any were opened yet. But that was always my dream, and I also, I have a little side dream too of doing like a catering marijuana
Mm.
business, not food. I'm gonna have a van, and I'm gonna roll up, and I'm gonna offer, joints and dabs and edibles for your retirement party, for your birthday, for your weed friendly wedding.
The bud bar, huh? Show up with the.
Mobile bud bar.
There you go. Yeah, the catering company. Hey, that's not a bad business idea. And the lounges is something I heard is coming back. I heard some of the activist groups out here kind of pushing that towards there's a laundry list of things that we'd like to change within any state.
Yeah, man.
Um,
The whole, they need to come up with some sort of, and I'm probably not using the right terminology, like a nano test, because I don't know about you, but I know if I just smoke a little bit of weed, I'm not super high. I'm not crazy. I'm not
right.
going to go get in an accident. I mean, obviously, there's levels of being high. You can usually tell by their eyes, you know. They need to come up with something like that to allow these bud bars. Otherwise, the cops are just going to be hanging out, and everybody that leaves, they're going to pull them over and test them, and we're all going to test positive for THC.
Yeah, and that's one of the other things, right? Of back to how cannabis affects everybody differently, being that, for one person, right, whether they take one hit of a joint or even a 5 milligram gummy, right, they might be sick. They're so high, as opposed to someone like ourselves. I'll burn down a couple grams to myself and, go to the gym and exercise like nothing happened, and so and there's a tolerance plays into effect, but also who you are and how you interact with it and your experience, and so that's one of the tough things. Alcohol somehow is a little bit easier chemically, I guess, to figure out how much you ingest and your impairment levels.
Yeah,
Um,
body
you know,
weight
and
and all that stuff.
yeah, and tolerance plays a little bit of effect, but truth to cannabis, like, it just affects people so different,
And I
so
can't say
different.
like, oh, but that weed only had 14% THC. I don't care. I was baked as shit off 14% THC.
Yeah, and so how much do you see? We interview a lot of people in California, and in California, it's like if something's not at like 30% or over, it's like the consumers won't buy it, so then the stores won't buy it. And I know everyone in the industry preaches, and you already brought it up on here. Don't look at THC percentage. It does matter, but it doesn't. It should not be the leading factor. How much do consumers really in your shop lean to that THC percentage?
Unfortunately, a lot. So my conversations with my vendors are, hey, buddy, I'm really sorry. I know better. But my customers walk in the door and they want those high numbers. So I need those high numbers when you're selling me some weed. But then I also I'm in a rather underprivileged demographic area of where I'm at. A lot of people are on a very tight budget. And so if I have an ounce of weed that's $30, even though it's only like 14%, I'll sell it all day long.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense, and it's I know it's a frustrating. I know us in the industry at this point feel like we're screaming at walls sometimes that THC percentage doesn't matter, but as what we were saying earlier, the information and the education out there is not widespread, and when you're in the industry, you're likely passionate, nerdy about this, and you get caught in an echo chamber to the people that are in the industry and don't get to have the privilege to talk weed all day. You don't hear this information, and you might hear it, but you still don't believe it and there's so many different variables that go into play. I was just talking to a store in Illinois, and I'd never thought of it like this explicitly, but they said that that consumers, they think that consumers buy higher THC because cannabis is so expensive, and they feel like they're getting a better bang for their buck. And I was like, I think that's probably fairly accurate.
Yeah, I think that would probably be fair to say too, because I
Yeah.
know typically, the lower price stuff, I've never really gotten any bomb ass outside weed that was, way high up there and super crystally. I mean, it is what it is. You can, I'm honest with my customers. I'll be, yep, that's outdoor grown. Why do you think it's so cheap? Oh, another thing too, you can say in this industry, this is the industry, you get what you pay for. And
Mhm.
that's what I tell my customers all the time. I'm sorry if you only have $15 for an eighth. I have $15 eighth, but just remember, you get what you pay for.
It's very true, and I think, again, I said I don't like to draw. I try not to draw the parallels to the other industries, but when you look at like the alcohol industry or wine industry, right? There are $3 bottles of wine, and there are $3,000 bottles of wine, and there's market for all of them, but it's the market's so mature. When a consumer goes in, they understand I only have $15, so I'm going to buy a $15 bottle of wine. They're not in there like, oh, that $300 bottle of wine could bring it down to 25 for me, But somehow in cannabis, we're still in this phenomenon where I don't know, because we come from a barter system. I don't quite know. People are still kind of, I want to pay a couple dollars, but I want the highest quality possible.
So now that, the state is involved and got their nose in everything that we do, I can't do bartering. But back in the medical days, when I used to barter all the time with people, they'd bring me in here. Will you take this for a gram of weed? And of course I would, just because I felt bad for anybody that can't get a damn gram of weed.
Right.
I do. I feel terrible.
Absolutely. And so, one of the things that I wanted to ask is at the store, do you have any noticeable brands that you guys carry that you feel like consumers come in and request by name or seemingly can't get
Absolutely.
can't get enough of, and what are some of those
Absolutely.
brands?
One of my favorite farms, it's called From the Soil,
Okay.
and they're up in Elma. I'm going to give Jason a shout out if he happens to be listening. But great farm, pesticide free. And I have a pre roll. It's a 2-pack pre roll, and each pre roll is 3/4 of a gram. So you get a gram and a half of some really great smoke for $6. That is my biggest seller in my store. People walk through the door and ask for damn tasties.
Hmm.
Damn tasties is what they're called. And then I recently picked up a farm called Stone Age. I don't know if you've ever smoked a Stone Age.
I don't think I know that name, but I can't picture
They
the
just,
product.
they just do joints, and all their joints are infused with keef. And so for $4, you're getting a joint with testing as high as $35. So you've got my customers are super happy. Not only are they getting cheap weed, they're getting high numbers too.
Hmm. So that's hitting that what we were talking about, that consumer demographic that is trying to be cost effective, but
Yep.
obviously get that THC bang for their buck. And I think that's for some of these brands, right? Like price definitely dictates, the majority of the market is dictated around price.
Yep.
and or THC percentage. And I think there's been a couple brands that are able to position themselves around that. But people buy brands for and seed certain things in brands for for various reasons that are personal to them. And what are some of the ways you feel like, because one of the challenges, right, from coming from medical, where it was more of a deli system, if you will, where it was jars. You could see it, you could smell it. Most cases you could squeeze a nug or someone chopstick it up right in front of your face. To now we have everything prepackaged where you can't necessarily see it. And, we've all been there where weed looks good and you open it up and smoke it and you're like, man, they just didn't cure this right. Or it didn't, whatever you saw in the look deceived you on the end. And as opposed back in the day, there might be weed that looked really shitty, but if you get the right vouch, someone's like, no, this is the one, don't look at it, and we've lost that in legalization. So what are some of the ways you feel like people calculate if weed is good or not before they buy something?
Gosh, all kinds of ways. So I have 2 lamps on my counter so people can look at the weed under the light. They're in packages, but a lot of them will like poke at it, squish it, try to squeeze the Mylar bag to get some smell out of there. Whatever. I've had people stand there, I'm not kidding you, for 10 minutes trying to decide, touching and poking and looking. And I'm just like, come on, it's just some weed, grab some weed. And then I've been hurt by Google review by somebody not liking their weed. Like I have any fault in it. I got a 1-star review or a 2-star review a couple times because the weed was shitty. And I would be like, I wish you would have. I try to reply to all my Google,
Mhm.
stars or whatever. And I say, hey, I'm sorry you didn't feel comfortable enough to come talk to me. I'm the owner. I've waited on you. I know who you are. I would have, offered you I can't give you anything for free, unfortunately. Can't give you a refund. It's not allowed. But I'll hook you up and give you the best deal I can give you because I feel bad, that happened to you. Now you just brought my star rating down by giving me a
Mm.
1 star.
I-
So, I'm at the mercy of the consumer for stuff like that.
because cannabis is an experience based thing, right? You have a poor experience with it. It's you open a jar up and it doesn't smell good. You're like, oh god, this, and you smoke it and you're like, oh, this isn't smoking right. And then you have a negative
Yeah.
experience with that, and it's you're right, you're at this mercy of the products you sell that someone can't see beforehand. They buy something they don't like. So another question I have is, have you seen customers buy a product, have a poor experience with it, and then come back and give that same brand another shot? Do you see that very often, or do you see them completely turned off from that brand from just
Yeah,
a single one?
typically completely turned off.
Yeah.
They just move on to something else. And I have a huge selection in my shop right now. I mean, my wall, I have my pricing. People know from cheapest to highest so that people know exactly where to go. I mean, let's face it, if you're on a budget and you only got so much money, you want to know what section you're going to be looking at for your weed. And so, I find that I've had a couple people that came in and complained about something and they're like, I'll never smoke that again. I'll never smoke that again. And it's really too bad because it probably wasn't that farm. It was probably just some other circumstances that didn't work for them with that weed, but I'm sure there's other good weed from that same farm.
Yeah, and that's the issue, right? Like, you're dealing with the agriculture good. Sometimes one batch is significantly better than the other, or not as great, or even significantly worse. Or every now and then, it's hard to quality control if you're growing at scale every single nug. I know some craft farmers out there can do that, and that's a big part of who they are. But it's not realistic for everyone. But I think that's an important takeaway for a lot of brands and cultivators out there, is to understand that your quality control is really important, because if someone has a negative experience with your product, it's very difficult to win that. I mean, like, almost
Absolutely.
non-existent for them to go back. I can't think of how many brands I've bought and been like, I really didn't like that product, and like, I avoid not only that strain, but I'll avoid that brand until somebody I really trust really convinces me otherwise.
You'll be like, that's what?
Yeah, and then I saw Mark from Green Rush. chimed in here. Sorry, I just saw your comment, Mark. We're talking to Don from Emerald Coast Cannabis in Bremerton, Washington. Green Rush is a Washington producer, so we
I'm
got
just
some
getting ready
Washington.
to put my first order in with those guys.
Oh, well, look at that! Look at that, Mark. She's putting in the first order. I was just at their farm a couple weeks ago, a month ago. Their indoor one. They also have the outdoor too.
Yeah.
But yeah, those guys do great. Those guys on that craft side of their indoor flower, definitely in that craft quality control. I got a little bit at my house right now. What are some of the things that you want to see changed within the Washington State market?
Definitely the tax structure, especially. I mean, I'm not going to say, if it goes federally legal, it's when it goes federally legal. And I know the feds are dragging their feet because now we're going to have to get tax write-offs and tax breaks like every other
Hmm.
business. Where right now we can't, and like I said, when I told you I did 2 million in sales, well, take away almost 50% of that right there just for my taxes. Okay, then the price of the goods, and then also it's considered profit, but that's how I pay my people, that's how I
Mhm.
keep the lights on, that's how I pay my insurance bill and my licensing, and there's a lot of costs that goes into it. And so, you know I'm not a multimillionaire. I might be someday, but it's not going to happen real soon, not with this tax structure.
Absolutely, and that getting those tax write-offs will be a huge, huge plus for any operator in this business, owner and operator in this
Absolutely.
business.
And we
But like,
deserve it. It's a regular business. It's just like any other business. Product in, product out.
yeah, but like you said, I don't think consumers also understand, right? Like they often look at price, and what's funny is too the price of weed like hasn't changed. Inflation, gas prices go up and down. The price of a McDouble, McDouble's no longer on the dollar menu. You know what I mean? Like inflation affects everything, but somehow we want to pay $40 for an eighth of good weed from now
Yes.
until the end of eternity, even though rent, utilities, license, everything can continually go up. So there's a weird mindset shift around the cannabis consumer, and I mean I'm guilty of it as well. But I don't think that they really fully comprehend when federal legalization comes around, your cannabis is going to be expensive. Whether it's a couple dollars more, $10 more for every unit purchased, it's going to go up, and that's not money that's going into the retailer's pocket or the farmer's pocket.
Nope.
And you and I were talking right
Absolutely.
before you and I were talking right before we started this. It's where's the you asked that question. You said you're curious about where's that money going to come from. It's very likely the state's going to be like, yeah, we're going to take less taxes. That's very unlikely. Um, so sadly, we're likely going to see just an overall increase on the products, which really sucks.
Yep.
Um, I mean, not only for the consumer, it just really sucks for the industry and moving the majority of people towards a standardized, legalized model.
Yeah. But you know what? Someone turns 21 every day. I get new customers all the time. And marijuana's not going away. I mean, I love it. I love smoking weed. I smoke weed every day. I would hate to have to give it up. I don't think I could.
Yeah, no, and that's definitely agreeable. And I even put to my own personal journey with cannabis. I used to buy very cheap cannabis because I could stretch it when I was much younger, and I could get as many blunts as I could have out of a certain dollar amount that I was comfortable spending. But the moment I tried really good weed that cost about twice as much of the dirt weed I was purchasing, I've never been able to go back to the dirt weed and just figured out my life accordingly to pay for the good weed.
Cut back on other things.
Yeah,
Priorities.
right,
Priorities.
exactly. Priorities, and good weed is high up there on.
Yeah.
It's like rent, good weed, utilities maybe afterwards.
That's funny. I employ a bunch of stoners. I'm telling you, a good group of people. I have 6 employees, and they all love their weed. They all love their weed. That's what they spend. The majority of them spend their tips on just weed.
Oh man, that's funny. So another thing I want to ask you is about kind of female representation in this industry. It is no secret that the cannabis industry, when you break down ownership, is male dominated. It is incredibly male dominated. But we've had quite a bit of guests that are female lately, and just kind of ask their perspective. Some people say there's pros and cons of it. Some people say there's a lot of negativity around it. Some people say, I see it, but it doesn't bother me. But I'm just kind of curious, as a woman owned business in this space, what is your kind of temperature on just female representation in the legal cannabis industry?
Um, I I definitely were outnumbered. But the females that I have met in the industry, well, freaking, of course, they're all rockingly awesome. I have a female friend of mine that's a grower. Her company is called Hazy Days. We've been friends since the medical days, and we both went off into recreational. I used to buy from her back in the medical days, and now she's got a farm in Belfair, and I've gone and visited her farm, and it's, she employs a lot of women. I want to say she might have one or two men working for her, but I love it. It's empowering. I'm all about, women helping other women out. Um, I love it when I run into it. If I see somebody sends me an email and says, I just got one recently from a female owned farm, and I'm like, I'm all over that female owned farm, female owned business. Let's work. Let's have a
Mm,
relationship. But I don't feel it or see it too much. I get a lot of respect. I think that I have a pretty good relationship with almost every farm that I do business with. We have each other's numbers and we text each other. Hey, I'm going to be putting in an order soon. Got anything good? And they'll text me back. So I don't feel like being a woman in this industry has hindered me at all, for sure.
yeah, no, that's a great take, and I appreciate you sharing that because it's something that you look at. The industry is not as diverse at the ownership level. It's very diverse in who celebrates and who uses cannabis. That
Hmm.
has no gender, race, or anything, right? People of all walks of life and backgrounds enjoy cannabis. Just when we look at ownership, it kind of the predominantly goes to a certain demographic, and so it's always great to see just people that are outside of that demographic that are kicking ass and sharing love, because especially in my opinion, right, I'm a man, but women make the world go around, and so we need more of that.
The world don't spin without us.
Yeah. I mean, it did, my life started with that. So I gotta pay
Man,
homage.
I have 3 grown kids, and I've smoked pot with all of them, and it's cool, you know what I mean? It's relaxing. We don't have to worry about anyone being stupid. I like smoking weed with my kids, and they all are so proud of me, honestly. They tell me all the time, and I love it.
That's also what was the transition of going from, I mean, obviously you've been in cannabis for a while, but once your kids kind of found out that you were in cannabis, how did they have an initial reaction? Has that changed over time?
They were all pretty shocked because my ex-husband was a cop, and I did loss prevention for 15 years. So we shocked many people. Many people. I mean, I in high school, I would definitely nobody would ever have thought in a million years this is something that I would be doing, and I've shocked a lot of people.
That's
But I like
that's
that.
Yeah, that's I mean, and but that is very beneficial in breaking the stigma, right? Like this
Yeah.
cannabis is where it is where it is, and still has so long to go because it just had this negative stigma for so long. And people like yourself, or anyone that's able to share their truth and their honesty around the plant helps break that stigma, but also normalizes it where you say, I didn't come from a background of growing up as a third generation illegal cannabis farmer. Right? I came
Man.
from this walk of life, but it also your story helps because you didn't just see recreation and like, let me just jump in and do a cash grab, right? Like you got into the industry beforehand, are really from the culture, and that is excellent to hear. What do you guys have planned for 2022?
I have plans of continuing to grow my business. It's like I said, it's been going really well. I don't know if COVID had anything to do with it or not, but I'm sure the Biden bucks had a lot to do with it. But I'm just my team is really good at helping me. I'm gonna start doing some more like Instagram, some more social media. I'm not really big on social media, and so I have my people at work do it for me, and we're gonna get more into that and do some more, advertising of the shop and stuff. But it's hard to get around what you can and can't post about cannabis. We all know that how that goes. And that's kind of what what I have in store for 2022. Get my ex paid off so that I can be free and clear.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Taking taking full control of the reins. and growth, man. That's awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to hop on this podcast and talk about the industry, your path through this industry, and really being vulnerable and talking about your story. That's again, that really just helps break the stigma, and I think gives people a lot of context around who's involved with this industry and how, again, how inclusive cannabis can be to anybody anywhere. I just really appreciate that.
Thank you for having me. It's been really fun. I love
Awesome.
talking about the cannabis because I mean my life is wrapped around it.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And this is Mitch from Respect My Region. We're on the North American Weed Tour, and I've been talking to Don Dodge of Emerald Coast Cannabis out in Bremerton,
ECC baby.
out here in Washington Market, Washington in the house, man. All right, man. We will see you guys next time.
Thank you.